Welcome to the Arlington Catholic Herald podcast. We've got stories you won't find anywhere else. I'm Stachyra Lopez, social media coordinator. Joining us in the studio today is Father Rich Miserendino, parochial vicar of St. Bernadette Church in Springfield. Before we get started, a quick request. If you're enjoying this podcast, please leave us a rating on Stitcher, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen, and then email it to a friend. Or drop me a line at feedback@catholicherald.com to let us know how we're doing. Father Rich plays saxophone with the Capitol Wind Symphony. Here's a short sample from a recent rehearsal for a concert to be held November 15th at St. Bernadette Church. It's at 7:30 p.m. Now back to Father Rich. Thanks for joining us today.
Well, thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here, and I'm happy to be able to talk with you today about God, music, and any other interesting things.
Cool. Can you tell us a little more about the concert this week?
So one of the things I'm very privileged to be doing at St. Bernadette's is working with our pastor to kind of start a new program so that we can invite people into the church. We're trying to take Pope Francis up on his word to go out to the peripheries and invite people in. And a lot of times it's difficult for people to come to church who haven't been there in a long time or don't even know anything about the Catholic Church. And music is a fun and easy bridge to that. And so we wanted to start a concert series to invite people in. And it just so happens that I play with this band, the Capitol Wind Symphony. And so that was an easy match. I went to Father Don and I said, "Hey, Father Don, I have a group if we want to do a concert." And he said, "Well, I want to do a concert and you have a group." And so this began a conversation. Well. Yeah, exactly. It worked out really well. We were able to start a concert series, and so we're going to have one in Advent. It's pretty much going to be quarterly, but this is our kickoff concert. And I think it's going to be pretty wonderful. It's a very accessible concert. It's going to be in the church. The thing about St. Bernadette's is we have a beautiful space that serves for the liturgy, but we can also, it's a huge church, so we can fit a whole wind ensemble in there. So we'll play the concert, and then there'll be a reception afterwards if people want to join us. I'm sure a lot of the musicians will be around to sort of talk and get to meet people. I think it's a great way to welcome new people in. I think it's something that people can invite friends to, too. We're going to play a wide variety of music. It's mostly in the classical vein, but there's some jazz in there. There's a little bit by Bernstein, a little bit by Gershwin, so kind of like the classical jazz mix. But the thing is, it's 60 to 70, give or take, professional musicians that are in this ensemble, and one lonely priest. So I'm all by myself, but they allow me to play with them, and it's really a great privilege to be able to be with such great musicians, and I'm really looking forward to it. I think it's going to be a great evening.
So for those of us who might not know as much about music, what is the difference between a wind symphony and a regular symphony?
Okay, so this is like super nerd points. But so the difference between a band and an orchestra is like the first thing. So a concert band typically does not have stringed instruments like a violin or a viola or a string bass. The possible exception is sometimes concert bands have harps and string basses. Usually an orchestra doesn't have, sadly, instruments like a saxophone or a euphonium, and the sections of instruments are much smaller than you'd find in a concert band. So in a concert band, you might find up to maybe 20 clarinets. In a symphony orchestra, you would usually find maybe only 2 or 3. So the proportions of instruments and the difference between strings and winds is there. Now, what makes a wind symphony versus a concert band? There it gets a bit fuzzy. We're kind of a concert band that we just call ourselves a wind symphony because it sounds nicer. But we try to do symphonic works that are more like you'd hear in a concert hall in the Kennedy Center. If you went to go see the National Symphony Orchestra, we try and do works like that, but for band. So no strings allowed, only wind instruments, but we do get saxophones and euphoniums, which are kind of like mini tubas. So that's what we got.
Oh, that's cool. So how did you get started with all of this? I understand you've been playing the saxophone a long time.
Oh, yeah. I've been playing saxophone for probably 25 years now, and I got started because my dad played saxophone. And so I always loved music, said, I want to join the band. And my dad said, well, we have a saxophone. And that was an easy gimme because it was right there. And my dad actually played saxophone in college and in high school. So he was my first teacher. And so I got started playing, and then eventually I got better and better and better, and it sort of became my thing in high school. And after that, I started playing with the Capitol Wind Symphony for the summers. They do sort of pops-ish type concerts in the park, which are easier. It's more accessible for a high schooler. So they let me in when I was in high school to sort of tag along with like the pros, which was a great experience. And I went off to music school, did that for 4 years, came back here and worked for a while. And that was sort of like one of my side things that I did. They let me back in because one of my degrees in college was music from the Eastman School of Music. So they were very happy to have me. And one of the key things was that I own a bari sax. A baritone sax is like the big Bertha of all saxophones. It's the big one.
Nice.
And they're very rare and they're very expensive, and I happen to have one. So like it's kind of nice being a priest having a bari sax, because then people are like, hey, you come play with us. Hey, you come play with us. It's sort of a natural opening.
Let's take a listen to Father Rich playing the sax. In our November 7th print edition, you said, "We feel strongly it's time for the Catholic Church to reclaim support of the arts." Can you explain that a little bit for us?
Oh, sure. That's something I'm very passionate about. And the thought is this. There existed, once upon a time, not too far away in a galaxy far away, not too long ago, an environment where the Catholic Church actively cooperated with, collaborated with, and empowered, really, musicians and other artists to do great and beautiful things for the glory of God, but also to sort of lift everybody up, to lift up the human spirit. You can think of like Michelangelo. And some of Michelangelo or Bernini, some of the greatest works of the greatest artists and sculptors were financed by the church. Yes, they worked on churches. They also did other things, but like that's who paid their room and board while they were doing these beautiful things. And it's the same with music. When you look at some of the greatest composers that have ever been, they were often church musicians or got their start there. Bach was an organist. Even I think of the great oratorios and like St. Philip Neri starting the oratory tradition, where he'd basically have little concerts to evangelize people. And we've kind of lost that, I think, in my opinion. We've kind of lost that in the past couple of years. And there's kind of been this divorce, I think, between the arts and God. Not that I don't think it exists there naturally, but I think that people now don't necessarily see art and beauty as connected to God. And I think that's a great sadness, because they actually speak to us in a very, very deep and powerful way about God, in a different language, in a different way. And I think for the Catholic Church to start supporting that in a direct and deliberate way again, saying, here, musicians, like, we want to support you in making beautiful music, because it's what human beings, art is what human beings do when they're thriving, when they're the most happy. It's different than like eating or exercise that enables us to do other things. Art and play, like games and music and creating new things, is what people do when they're thriving. It's what the soul looks like when it's on fire for God. And there's something really beautiful about that I kind of want to guide us to sort of repossess. And I think it will help us to recapture some of the beauty of the liturgy too, and some of the beauty of what the church looks like as we celebrate our sacraments in the Mass as well. Because one of the things, like I said at the beginning, that we're really trying to do with this is give a sort of a middle space to people who might go to Mass every Sunday, but I don't know, I feel like even before I was a priest, and sometimes as a priest, it's kind of a big ask to get people to go to Mass. You say, like, you want to come to Mass with me? And they're kind of like, I don't know, maybe. And
Right.
to say, like, hey, you want to go to a concert with me at my local parish is kind of a beautiful middle ground, where it's like, well, maybe that gets them over the fear of going to a church. They see that there are nice people at St. Bernadette, and there are nice people. I know that's a shameless shout out, but there are nice people at St. Bernadette Catholic Church, and they want to welcome people in. And so maybe they go there for a concert, and then maybe they come back for a pancake breakfast. And then maybe after 4 or 5 of those things, they feel comfortable enough to come for Mass with a friend. And they
Right.
realize that there's actually a home for them there as well. So that's kind of the project.
Well, very cool. I wish you success in that. Thanks for joining us today.
Absolutely. My pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
Also in the news, St. John Neumann Church in Reston has a growing addiction ministry. As marijuana becomes a bigger business, the parish is exploring what that means for today's youth. We'll take an in-depth look at the issue in our November 21st edition. Also, there's hope in sight for people affected by cystic fibrosis. A promising new therapy could turn the disease into a manageable chronic condition. Students and staff at Bishop O'Connell High School have been raising money for a cure for over 40 years. They'll have a lot to say. To read these stories and more, go to CatholicHerald.com/subscribe or give us a call at 703-841-2590. Thanks for listening.